Hello, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everything in between. Calkings here again for another fantastic and exciting video. So, this is going to be a bit of a long little ramble talk here. And I just want to preface this by saying I love you guys. It's amazing what we've been able to do. We're now over 280 subscribers, and I'm hoping to get to 300 soon. That big 300. We're getting very close, and I'm very excited about that. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we are talking about comfort and sometimes having to leave that behind, specifically in the regards of friends. Now, I find that many good stories, when you look at TED Talks and stuff, one of the best things they do is they open up with a personal story. And this personal story allows to form some sort of sense of connection with the audience. Allows them to feel like, hey, that guy's going on with us. They get what we're going through. And there's no better teacher than first-hand experience, I find. And it just also helps to have some idea of who you're dealing with. You don't want to listen to somebody who's a complete stranger. You want to have some sort of sense of knowledge of who they are, because then that allows you to build some sort of trust going forward in the conversation. So I always try to talk a little bit about myself, but first of all, let me start off opening up here, right? So I had a few friends, and I have nothing against them now, and I hope they're all doing well. And when I say I hope they're all doing well, I don't mean that from a bitter place or because I feel like that's the right thing to say. I genuinely mean I hope they're doing well, because I don't think that this life provides enough opportunities and time for us to spend it on hating. But my biggest thing was that I had a lot of people surrounding me, and they weren't really helping me. They were sort of bringing me down, right? They were on a downward path, and even if they weren't, they were acting bitter. And any psychiatrist worth their salt will tell you that your environment shapes how you are. When we look at things like Rat Park, this is a great example of how when the rats were given other rats and other play items and stuff, that they were no longer addicts to heroin-laced water, right? But when they were all alone, they would often drink that till the point of overdose and death. And even them who did drink some of the water that was laced, none of them ever drank it to the point of addiction or dying. And so, this just shows you that it's important to have good environment with good people. And equally important, it's to treat yourself as your own best friend. So many of us were scared to push that trigger, right, of let's go. So, one thing I found that was hard for me was it can almost feel like the loss of a loved one. It can almost feel like that you're letting go of something, and it feels like the grieving process of when somebody dies. And in some regards, it can hurt even more because you know they're still there, but at least you ended on good terms when somebody passes away. The idea is that you ended on good terms and you still love them and you got to spend time and enjoy with them. But the idea of letting go of a friend, in some regards, it can be harder because the idea is they're still out there and about in their life, but they might as well, for lack of a better term, be dead to you or you dead to them, as the saying goes, because you guys are no longer on good terms. And that just leads you to feel like, as any good person, you ask several questions of, could I have used a different combination of words? Could I have done this different? Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And so it's perfectly natural, and it's even okay to ask yourself these questions, and I would recommend that you do, because it's important to reflect on these types of things. It's at the point, though, when does it become productive and when is it a form of self-harm? And so when I say self-harm, I don't mean just in the traditional sense of cutting or mutilating yourself. I mean you can also do it with the language you use towards yourself. It can be very abusive, such as I'm a piece of shit, or, it's all my fault, or I feel so bad, or I regret. Or equally what's bad is sometimes you'll see people who blame others. And they'll say, this person did this to me, or this person did that. And I'm this way because of this person. I'm this way because of that person. And there's definitely some truth to that being said. At the end of the day, however, even if somebody influences you and they make it harder for you, you are the person who is ultimately responsible for what you do and how you feel. I grew up with family members, and I myself was a perpetrator of abuse growing up too. Unfortunately, I've done things that I'm not proud of by any means. And so I'm not perfect when I say this. But I grew up with family members, like my older brother Robert, for example, who were just absolutely monsters, right? And still to this day is a monstrous person. And I always blame them for the way I turned out. But I recognized that wasn't their fault, that I had a conscious choice, right, to be better. For example, there's a story that goes like this. There were two sons who had an alcoholic father. One son chose to have a happy family and to get a good job because he saw that his father was an alcoholic. The other son ended up getting arrested and jailed and abused his wife and became an alcoholic because he saw his father was an alcoholic. They were both raised in the same environment, but how they handled it was different. And so for me, it was like, even though my family wasn't good examples, they could be staggering warnings for me. And I could at least remind myself of the person I didn't want to be. And so I might not be even the person I am today without some of these things. So the radical acceptance was so important for me, because I can't change what happened in the past, and I can't change how other people are. But what I can change is the way I react to certain situations, the way that I interpret that situation. I don't get angry with people like that anymore. I have a form of pity for individuals who are very disrespectful or very hateful or very hurtful, because I recognize that has nothing to do with me. It can't have anything to do with me, especially if I'm not at fault. It has everything to do with them and the fact that some individuals just genuinely don't like boundaries or respects. I'll give you an example. And I mean this with all the love in my heart if you ever come across this, Caleb, but you are currently a prime example. I'm going to use you for this story, but I'm going to use it respectfully. And I hope that anybody listening to this story will also be respectful. So for the sake of this being said, I use you only to be a prime example of what not to be. And I hope that you don't take this personally, because it's not personal towards you. And I still love you and I have a lot of hope that you will become a better person in the future. But for example, Caleb was an old friend of mine, and now I have decided to remove him from my life. And the biggest reason I decided to remove him from my life was because he didn't respect boundaries. And I remember he tried to talk me into the game of League. And it's interesting how everybody has their own perspective. So if I had to guess from Caleb's perspective, he probably felt like I was holding him hostage in a game of League. He probably felt like I was choosing Gavin over them, and that I was ditching them to hang out with Gavin. He probably felt like a lot of things. I remember he said one thing in particular, and it was something like, I remember I was playing games with these people, and I was given some advice, and it was unsolicited advice, and I just said, that's okay, I can make mistakes, no worries. And the way he interpreted it was that it was, it was some type of way. He interpreted some type of way, obviously not positive. But nobody else had a problem with it. And in fact, all I said was simply that, right? It's funny how people can sort of twist words to be a lot more malevolent than they really are. So for me, it was just simply that. It was, I didn't want the advice. It was appreciated, but I made a mistake, and I was probably going to continue to play how I wanted to play the game. And there's nothing wrong with that, just as I think other people can play the game. Now, if I'm looking for advice, of course I'll ask. And I even welcome it for a lot of things, right? But sometimes I don't want to be constantly streamed advice on how I should play games like League of Legends. Sometimes I just want to play how I want to play. For me, I don't want to sweat. I don't want to have to try hard. But I equally don't want to throw away a game. And the guy I was talking to, Jugger, super cool guy, didn't take it personal, didn't think anything of it either. But I remember Caleb brought it up, and he brought it up at a time when we were particularly having a bit of a tense conversation. And I remember thinking, if you had a problem with that, then what would have helped? Would it be if you mentioned it, right? And so my biggest thing was, that's a valid criticism. And in fact, I think it's important that we do talk about those things. But clearly this wasn't coming from a place of love. This was coming to attack me. And that's why he brought it up when he was heated. he wasn't actually looking to have a conversation about it, and clearly it was something that was bothering him. But if it was bothering him, he should have talked about it. Instead, he let it bottle it up, and when you bottle up stuff, you end up starting to build resentment towards individuals when you don't talk things out, because then there's all this resolved shit, and with all this resolved shit, it builds up resentment, and then you start looking at them in a different type of way. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, this topic today is more of like boundaries, comfort, and just getting rid of bad people in your life. So I got a few stories for you, but I'll go ahead and continue with this one. And I remember asking him, I told him I tried to have a conversation with him later on. And I remember because I think it was the first time, right? Again, that bringing that up was not coming from a place of love. It was trying to, attack me. And if he was bothered by it, clearly he was. This was like, I think, a couple days ago. Then he should have mentioned something right then and there. Or at least come back to it later and mention something so that way the resentment wouldn't build up. But people like Caleb, unfortunately, lack the ability to be emotionally mature and handle stuff in an adult manner. And I found that particularly damning, because I remember this is an individual that I have bent over backwards multiple times, and I have loaned money over and over again. And speaking of which, sometimes friends will take advantage of you. Currently, Caleb and his partner owe me money, and they're not paying me back, and I have no doubt that I will ever get that money back. I do not believe I will ever get it back, especially with the way things have ended on an unfortunate note. And that really sucks. And I do believe Caleb is the type of person to try to be very vengeful and hateful. I believe that if he could, he would absolutely log into my accounts, and that he would try to change all my passwords or ruin my life, which is why I have set up two-factor authentication for everything. And I hate that. And that was another thing that I had to look at, right, was the people I was surrounding myself with. With Caleb, I had to constantly be on eggshells. It was like little things like wanting to talk about my hobbies or my interests. And I remember trying to talk to him about, like, please don't interrupt me. And to his credit, he didn't interrupt nearly as much as he used to. But I remember trying to talk to him about my hobbies, and I felt like I always listened to him talk about his. And there was just a clear lack of participation on his end. And it wasn't even like trying to tell me, hey, I'm not in the mood or anything. The general lack of communication was a real issue. And it was just more like he would bring up a topic once, he was just waiting for me to stop talking so he could talk about what he wanted to talk about. And we've all met people like that. And, with Caleb particularly, it was my boundaries just weren't respected. He would be very mean, and then I would try to say something. And I remember saying, he dived under tower, it was particularly, and it got to the point where I started recording our conversations because I just didn't want it to be he said, she said, and I just wanted other people to see what kind of monster he had become. And so I haven't decided if I'm going to release those or not yet, mainly out of respect for him, and I don't wish to paint him in a nasty picture, because the Caleb that I knew wasn't this person that he is now. And so it's still hard for me to kind of come to terms with that. And I remember that he dived under tower as Yasuo, a iron 4 mistake. And he was very tilted and upset. I did not have my ultis up. I did not have my E up or my Q up as Yumi. I didn't have any abilities up. We had just been in a hard fight. We just had a hard trade that we did not win. And he decided to dive under tower and use his flash to get under the tower instead of waiting, if he was going to at least use the flash to get out of tower. Maybe go to the left into, the jungle camp to retreat to safety, and then use maybe a blast cone or something to get away. I don't know, out into the water or some shit. Something else, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up and explaining this is so you get an idea, right? So, dives under tower. I remember he got really upset with me, and I tried to explain, hey, I didn't have any abilities up. And I remember I said, I would never talk to you like that. And I remember he said, whatever, Chelsea. Or, no, he said, all right, Chelsea. And that was the point where I knew him and I were no longer friends. And I could see it slowly in the way he removed me from the group chat and Discord. And then I remember trying to reach out several times and talk to him, and him making no attempt to do such. And I remember then eventually removing me from Facebook. And at first I was hurt, and I wanted to make an attempt to reach out. I remember several times trying to reach out and have an adult conversation. And then that's when I realized friendships shouldn't be this much pain and suffering and hurt. It shouldn't be this much work and this much stress. Friendships should be enjoyable. And we kind of get trapped in this idea of the fact that, well, it's been some time. We've spent so much time into something, and we don't want to lose out on that investment because of all that time that we can't get back. And we have this image of the way this person used to be, and the hope is that maybe if we just talk things through, maybe we can go back to the way things used to be. Unfortunately, people change, and that just sucks. And I've had to sit down and write a pros and cons list and be honest with myself. And it was also just about the fact that I had spent a lot of time blaming myself and reflecting on what I did wrong. And for sure, I don't think Caleb ever saw that he did anything wrong. And more so to that, I remember because I brought it up, the conversation, I even apologized profusely. And I felt guilty for leaving the group chat in going to play with my friend Gavin. I felt really guilty about that. But there was nothing to feel guilty about. But even though I apologized, I explained that I thought they could have handled it better. He said he didn't see that he did anything wrong. So the first time was they were trying to throw a game of League because they weren't doing well. But even though they weren't doing well, we had two teammates that were doing well, including myself. So we were doing well. And League works on a unanimous system, right? Voting, right? So you have to have a unanimous vote, especially early. It has to be unanimous if it's like 15-minute early FF, and it has to be overwhelming majority 4-1. I believe if it's at 20-minute mark or 25, I can't remember. But to say that they weren't having a good time, but unfortunately, him and Matthew didn't consider that maybe other people were, and so they should at least try to have fun. And it was this sort of like selfish behavior that really started to get to me and make me start thinking about things, because it was not just me that Caleb was affecting, right? He has this partner named Zeta, and they argue and fight all the time. Now, to be said, I have had issues with Billy. In fact, I had a very bad issue with Billy, and it almost ended in our relationship ending a couple months back, and that was really tough for me. So I'm not criticizing them for having a rocky relationship. What I'm criticizing them is that it's okay to have even like near calls in your relationship, but it's how do you handle it going forward. And I noticed that even the people that they're supposed to love the most, I remember Zeta told me something like Caleb said he was going to go sleep with other women. And even though me and Billy were thinking about cutting off our relationship, we never said anything hurtful or mean to each other, right? We would never do that because that's not a productive conversation. And at that point, that's just being a bully, right? It's literally, you're saying hateful things to just be hateful and to hurt the person that you supposedly love the most, because you yourself are hurt and you can't properly communicate that. And so I started having like this laundry list of things I didn't like. Like I didn't like the fact that even little things like that they smoked around their child, or that they had child services called on them multiple times. It was like all these different things that I really just didn't like. And I always kept silent because like I was just trying to be so nice to them, and because I figured like if I ever criticized them in any way, they would try to get back at me or slander my name or something, and I'm still afraid of that. But I recognize that that's how bullying works, is they want you to be silent and not speak up. And I recognize that he was having issues with other people recently too, and that it wasn't just a me thing. And so I was just like, I just have to say something, like if nothing else. And so, it was really hard because I wanted to believe that the Caleb I loved and I grew up with on the same street with was still the same guy, but clearly he wasn't anymore. And, we can argue and talk about all my flaws, but at the end of the day, he straight up bullied me and was rude to me 2 different times over a video game. And when I tried to leave the conversation and I went and played with Gavin instead because Gavin wasn't mean to me, he took that personally. It was personal, but that's his fault. That was not my fault. He didn't have to be mean to me. He didn't have to say the hurtful things he did say. And he didn't have to say that, he did nothing wrong either. I was the one who apologized for that situation. That's how much I loved him. I was the one who apologized. And I didn't like that, like, he has this way of, like, he's very charming and charismatic in the sense that he can always paint himself out to be the guy who's right, always paint himself out to be the victim, always paint himself out to be the one who, wasn't in the wrong. And not just not in the wrong, but the other person was radically in the wrong. It was like 100% their fault. Like, the very fact that you don't get along with him, like, that's on you, buddy. It was not even like a slight ground of saying, I fucked up or anything like that. And that really bothered me, like, just looking at shit like that. And the fact that they would smoke around their child, and I mean, I know, like, it was weed or whatever, and they didn't literally have their child right next to them when they were smoking it, but they're still secondhand smoke, and it still sticks to the walls and permeates the air. They could have stepped outside. Little things like that, or screaming or spanking their child, like, that's okay, even though there's plenty of evidence that shows that that's abuse and that affects a child negatively. Or, I mean, like, just little things. Like, there was just a cavalcade of things. There's some other things, but I'm not bringing them up because those are in the past. And I don't believe in judging a person by the past unless their past actions are currently happening as well. So I'm going to leave out different aspects out of respect for that, because this isn't a slander campaign. This is just to show you what happens and how far the rabbit hole goes if you allow yourself to get picked on. Because empathy without limits is abuse towards yourself. It's toxic. Empathy without limits is toxic, and you need to keep that in mind. You can be nice, but you have to have limits. You have to respect yourself. Like, at some point, enough is enough. You just have no other option. I mean, what are you going to do? Just sit there your whole life? So that comes the question next is, okay, it's fine now, but what about in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And you only get so much time with people. You only have so many slots open for friends and then close friends. And I think it's about 5 to 10 on average. And that's assuming that you have the energy when you get off work to even socialize like that. And it also assumes that they also provide that back to you. Especially when you're young, these are the best years of your life, when you're in your literal physical prime. And you're going to spend it on people who just could care less about you. And even if they say they do, talk is cheap, you have to pay attention. People will absolutely show themselves in the way they are. You just have to pay attention. And I didn't. We tend to wear these rose-tinted glasses when things happen. And one thing you'll notice if somebody's like in an abusive relationship or there was somebody that's bad, is they'll constantly complain about them. However, when somebody else brings up points, like let's say they go and vent, right? And they vent about their partner. And they're talking all this bad stuff about the partner. But then when you point out stuff or you say maybe it's time to leave, then they double down and they're like, oh, they're not so bad, or, I can love them, I can stay with them. But they only say it as a defense mechanism for the relationship. They're never proactively saying it. It's always in response to criticism that doesn't come from them. And I think that's one of the scariest things that I was seeing with Caleb and Zeta, unfortunately. I still think they're both great people as far as like what they want to be. Actually, I can't even say that. I don't think they're great people. There was just so much wrong that was happening, and I was just a stepping stool. I literally tried everything I could to be the best friend I could possibly be. I constantly offered to help them with their situation, with their financial struggles. And to be fair, they have done things for me. I want to stress that they have helped me out in the past, and I'll always keep that in mind. And I'll always cherish the memories I have with them. But again, let this be a cautionary tale for you, like that if you're going through this, now's the time. Now's the time to go before it gets worse. Because if it's already bad now and you keep waiting, how much worse can it get? Like, how much worse can it get? The answer is it can always get worse. It can always get worse. Just when you think things are terrible, they end up in a tragedy, right? And I'd rather have, cut it off at terrible than it be a tragedy. And again, like I said, one door closes, another one opens. My friend group now is radically different from when I was in high school. Pretty much everybody has swapped out. And I'm grateful for the people I now have, that especially the ones that have been around for years. And the issues I have had with them I've been able to resolve. You need to respect yourself. If you don't respect yourself, unfortunately there's going to be people like Caleb who come around and they're very predatory, and they look at your kindness and your timid behavior, and then whether or not they realize it or not, they start bullying you for it because you don't stand up for yourself. And it's unfortunate because, on the other hand, you don't want conflict. You don't want to be seen as the asshole or the bad guy because you said something. You don't want it to come across as rude or mean, because that, as a good person, as any person who at least is halfway decent, our goal is not to hurt the ones we supposedly care about. So treat yourself with some respect. And here's the last thing, right? So I'll offer one or two other stories depending on how much time I have. Now, this is a story about this guy, Alex Shore. I remember clear as day when I was having really bad panic attacks. And I was sitting there, okay? And I can remember at the time I was with this person. I think they go by Xavier, they, them now. Even though we're no longer friends, we're far from it. We're far from being friends now. I'm still going to respect their pronouns and their given, not their given name, but their chosen name now, because that's a decent thing to do. But I was with Xavier at the time. And I'll give Xavier credit. They really stuck by me about 50-50 for the panic attacks. I know they were hard for them to deal with. But they stuck by me during that time, which helped, at least somewhat, At least in this particular instance, they really helped. And I remember I had called Alan up. I was just calling random people because I thought I was dying. And I remember saying something to him like, "Hey, I think I'm having a heart attack. Can you please take me to the hospital?" And I remember his response was very subtle. Not very subtle, but very just startling. He said, "I can't take my car out. I don't want to get in trouble with my mom." That said everything I needed to know. And of course, obviously I didn't die because I'm here right now. But that dude was not far from me. 10-15 minutes maybe. You think that your mom's not going to understand that that's an emergency? It's not like you're going out to buy Taco Bell. He didn't want to go out. It's just as simple as that. I don't need a smoking gun to know that. I can put two and two together. So for me, it was like, okay, this guy's a piece of shit. I don't care anything. He obviously doesn't give a fuck about me like that. All I am is an acquaintance to him. Somebody to kick it with. Somebody to talk about the football games with, right? Nobody who's going to listen to my deep thoughts. Nobody who's going to be there when I'm up and when I'm down. At my wedding and at my funeral. And I remember I called my friend Asher, and they were hours away. And you know what? They drove down, no questions, asked to stay on the phone with me the whole time. Took me to the hospital. And I love Asher. One of my favorite people. Literally one of my favorite people of all time. I'll never forget what they did for me that night. And they've done it more than once where they've come and picked me up. No questions asked. You need people like that. It's really, really important that you get people like that. Because what happens if you go homeless? What happens if you need some money because you're broke? What happens? What if? All you have to do if you want to play a little thought experiment is just ask a friend for money and watch how many of them just don't trust you at all. Watch how many of them say no. And maybe, don't even, you don't even have to ask for a lot. Just ask for $20, right? Especially the ones that are well off. Be like, "Hey, look, man, can you help me out here?" And maybe at best they'll be like, "Yeah, I'll loan it to you. I'll let you borrow it." Or especially what's douchey is if they ask for it with interest, because that means they're trying to get something out of it. Something like asking for money, don't make a habit of it, right? Don't be that guy, or ask somebody that you just met, but somebody you've known for years or you kick it with really well. If they're not willing to help you out with $20 or something, especially if they have it, they don't give a fuck about you, bro. And maybe you don't even have to ask for money, right? Maybe that's not it, okay? But ask me, like, hey, look, I need a place to go, or like, I need a night to stay somewhere. Wait till those situations happen and watch how many of them fold. These are fair weather friends. They're only around for when everything's, sunny and 70 degrees. I don't ever want to be like that, and I don't ever want to have people like that in my life anymore. I've removed so many people. You don't even have to be an enemy. You just, I just remove people who I just know I'm not like even friends with. I know people who have like hundreds of people on the Facebook, and they're all a bunch of Joe the coworkers. And what I mean by Joe the coworkers, it's somebody that you've known for years, and yet all you can say is, yeah, they're alright, because you don't know anything about them. You don't know their pet's name, you don't know where they live, you don't know their mama or their dada, or you don't know their friends, or you don't know their sexual preferences, you don't know their favorite hobbies, their passions, you don't know what religion they are, you know nothing about them. Just surface level shit. And I don't know nothing about you. Again, I've said this before, but keep this in mind when you're listening to this. Empathy with no limits is self-harm. It's toxic. It's abusing yourself. Because you become a doormat for these types of individuals. And you don't want this, right? Where friends, even if you have a friend, they're only a friend of circumstance, right? You look like high school, where people are all in a common area, and so they're talking, they're chilling, but you don't go out of your way to hang out with them, and they don't go out of your way to hang out with you. That's a friend of circumstance. Because once you get out of high school, how many of those motherfuckers do you even talk to anymore? Not many. And that really sucks. And it can be the same way when you go to work and you have a coworker that you really like, but once you leave or they leave, that's the end of that conversation. And people will say, well, people get busy. Okay? People don't have time. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about numbers, okay? There are 168 hours in a week. Let's say you work a full-time job. You have 40 hours, and you're sleeping 88 hours. That leaves you 72 hours for other things. Okay, let's say you have 50 hours. That leaves you 62 hours. Let's say you have 60 hours. That leaves you 52 hours. Now, people will claim, let's say you claim 75, which I don't believe you anyways, but let's say you claim that. People who claim that, usually it's been shown that they were off about 25 hours. They actually estimated over 25 hours. So the true number was something more like 50 hours a week. Even then, if we look at that 50 hours a week, you still have 62 hours of free time. So I was watching this, right? And it was talking about, there was this TED Talk, and they were talking about how this woman studied time management, was offering advice to clients. And in it, she looked at this time diary project looking at 1001 busy people. So there was this scenario. This woman, her water heater breaks. It's broken. But the next day, plumbers are out there to fix it. It takes 7 hours. And so, if you ask people, are they busy? Are they busy? Can they make time? They might say they make time. But I don't like the word they're busy, right? Time may not be it can't just magically increase, but it does have high elasticity. So when somebody says something like they can't do that, what you need to be honest with is that that's not a priority. That's what they really mean. They don't have time? No. For XYZ? No. Often it means it's not a priority. Because, for example, let's say just hypothetically, I know this is silly, but follow me along. If I offered you $100,000 to, I don't know, mop your kitchen floor or to work on a video project for 3 hours, you are absolutely going to magically have the 3 hours. It's not that you didn't have the 3 hours, it's that your priorities changed. Because you just earned $100,000, so of course you're going to use those 3 hours. So, again, make sure that the people you have in your life are making time for you. There is no such thing as I'm too busy. They're just not, bro. They're just really fucking not. People will make time for you, even if it's something as simple as like a 5-minute phone call once a week, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. once a week they call you on Discord. We have internet shit now. Like, literally, you can make time, dude. You can absolutely make time. It's not like you have to come see me. Even if you live across the world, there's internet, there's Discord, there's games. You can have, even if it's just us chilling on the phone, we don't talk about each other. Maybe we turn on our webcams and we just have dinner together. Or maybe we don't even have dinner like that. Maybe we don't even need the webcams. Or we just sit on the phone for like half an hour and just enjoy the idea of each other's presence. Enjoy each other's company in spirit. People will make time for things that matter. Don't ever let them bullshit you like that. And the last thing is, doing nothing is doing something. My last example is Alina. This woman abused me. Her mom was a sexual predator and attracted to minors, unfortunately, and it really fucked me up. And Alina sat there and watched and allowed it happen. I don't even know if Alina knew the severity of it, because I didn't know the severity of it until I got older. Her mother, Barbara. I mean, thinking back on it, so fucked up that I was being advanced on by a woman who was, I don't know if she was married or what, but she was seeing another man, Muhammad or something. I can't remember his name exactly, but he worked in this little gas station in Trotwood. And it was so fucked. It was so fucked. I was kind of bewildered. And I wasn't the best partner to Alina, but no matter what you say, Alina abused me. Alina tried to beat me up. Alina tried to smack me, and as a man, you're not allowed to hit women back no matter what. They can beat the shit out of you. They can smack you a frying pan. It's just kind of understood that you sit there and you're a punching bag for them, right? The most you're allowed to do is just walk away from it while they continue to slap on you. And I let that happen, unfortunately. What else was I going to do? And even after all that, Alina had this friend, Jade, who I decided I was not interested in. I did not owe Jade an explanation, by the way. This, to make a long story short, Jade and I were going to go on a date. I decided I didn't want to go on a date with Jade, and I decided I would date somebody else, my current partner, Billy. I was more interested in Billy. Billy had more interesting things to go on, and Billy, and me and Jade weren't even together. But Jade obviously took offense to that. I think it's because, so what happened was my phone was indeed broken. I sent a picture to Jade just to prove it and verify it. And so I didn't remember my Snapchat password, and I had to create a new account. And because of that, I lost a lot of contacts of people that I thought were really cool. This one girl comes to mind that I wish I would have, I kept her contact because she was super sweet and nice. A really good friend. And it really sucked that my phone now was, it was no longer working. But with that being said, yeah, it was kind of cringy and it bummed me out and really made me sad, for real. But I digress anyways. What was I saying? Yeah. Jade did not like that at all. And Jade took it as that was originally what I planned. And I understand that. Jumping to conclusions can do that. But that's a projection of your lack of trust issues because of the way you've been around other people, and you're projecting onto me the qualities in other people that you've seen, and also what you believe to be the reality, whether or not it's true or not. It can just be based solely on your anecdotal and life experiences. And that's not fair to me. But I understood why she felt that way. Now, it's not my responsibility to prove that to you, whether or not, right? Because even if I try, it's not going to work with some people. But I did my best, and I just told her, hey, this is what's up. I remember she called me a little dick and a faggot and all this. And it was okay, well, obviously you're hurting, but you don't know how to properly express that. And this isn't really about me. You feel like I owed you something. And I did go on, it wasn't a date, but I took Alina and Jade out to eat at a place out in Eaton. Just to be nice, just to be kind, just to try to do something real sweet, just to be a good friend. And I paid for the meals. And Alina, although she didn't say, anything bad about me, she did not defend me. She absolutely let Jade talk about me like that, and didn't stop Jade from doing that. And to add on to that, the abuse in the past, right? Here's what I'm trying to say. I tried to forgive Alina, but the truth was I didn't owe her forgiveness. I didn't. Sometimes it's okay to say, I don't accept that apology, or it's not okay. It's okay. People tell you have to forgive people. You don't have to. You don't have to. You can move on from them. This forgiveness, no, I don't forgive her. I've never forgot about it. I never will forgive her. Even I can recognize that people can change, but it doesn't change what happened and the fact that I had to go through years of therapy to deal with that. So make sure with these 3 stories I'm telling you that you keep in your life people who are genuinely good for you. It's I haven't always been the best person. I'm sure that they all have their perspectives on the type of person that they think I am. And I'll never diminish their feelings, because this is just my story and they have their story. I just think that for people like them, they always try to paint themselves as if they're like unequivocally the good guys. And I don't like that. They always found themselves with issues with other people. They always found themselves beefing with individuals and like having problems with XYZ friends. And it's like, if you're constantly having issues with other people, then at some point it can't be everybody else, it has to be you. And I don't believe in holding people to their past unless they're currently still behaving as they used to be. So take care of yourself, guys. I know this is a bit of a ramble, but I just sort of wanted to talk about it because I think it's important that you understand that we all go through shit. And I just wanted to say you need to be careful with the friends you select. Love you guys.